$200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES. You're listening to the SNES broadcast with your hosts, Soul Blazer and George.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Super NES Podcast, episode number 124 this time. This is your two regular co-hosts as always. I'm Greg. He's George.
Zoopity doop.
Yeah, I could not find where this name came from. But it's certainly a curious game name. But yes, as you probably heard, we are again joined by a special guest host in this episode. Back to the podcast after a very long absence. I think it's been like 2 years probably. But
It's been a while.
Yeah. So I'm very pleased to welcome gaming dude and now author like Brett Weiss back to the podcast.
Hey, how's it going?
Very well. So you've been very busy recently. Working on two Super NES books, which I was telling you before off mic. I really want to get. I just haven't had a chance to pick them up yet. I heard I've heard some very good things about them.
Yeah, thank you. I've been writing about retro games professionally since 1997, and since I started writing for the All Game Guide a long time ago. This database that was whose ambition was to catalog, describe, and review every single video game that ever came out in the history of the world. Where I wrote for the All Game Guide for a long time, and then I've sort of started writing for different magazines and newspapers. And in 2007, my first book came out, Classic Home Video Games 1972 through 1984. And the Classic Home Video Games series sort of does basically that: catalogs, describes, reviews every game for every classic console. My latest project is the SNES Omnibus Volumes 1 and 2. And those, between the two books, they cover every U.S. release for the Super Nintendo, including Zoop, the topic du jour.
Excellent.
That's a very daunting task, trying to cover all those games. So, the
SNES Omnibus books, originally I was going to do a fourth volume in the Classic Home Video Game series, because the first volume covers the Atari era, second volume covers the NES Master System and Atari 7800, and then the third volume covers the Neo Geo, Genesis, and TurboGrafx. So it was time to start working on the book that would cover the Super Nintendo, Jaguar, CDI, and 3DO, those early 90s consoles that came out then. And with the way the retro gaming book publishing industry has gone, bigger books, more color photos, coffee table books, higher production values, I decided to go a different way and found a different publisher. And so these are big deluxe hardcover books with dust jackets and a couple of thousand full color photos. You got your box scans, cartridge photos, screenshots, ads from other from old magazines. And I wrote a description, basically a write-up for each game, including reviews and stuff. And I had a lot of people in the community write personal stories for the books, including popular YouTubers like John Riggs and Kelsey Lewin and John Lester and RGT85 and, people like that, And I even got a New York Times best-selling author, John Jackson Miller, who does a lot of Star Trek and Star Wars novels, best-selling novels. So it's got a wide variety of nostalgic stories in the books, in addition to the basic write-ups.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely have noticed the overall quality of retro gaming books has definitely increased a lot. In the last several years.
10-15 years ago, it was very difficult to get a publisher interested in publishing a retro gaming book, because they thought, who cares about that? That's just old junk. Well, in the last 10 years or so, last 12 years, retro gaming has snowballed and gotten more and more and more popular and mainstream.
Yes.
Right.
So now it's easier to convince a publisher to, come out with a really nice volume or to accept your idea to begin with. And then you've got some YouTubers and people like that, self-publishing books, and you don't always have the grammar, the writing quality may not be as good in those because, and some of them are good. I'm not slamming anybody in particular, but, with self-published books, you don't have a professional editor going over it. Typically, they might have hired one independently, but, professionally published books definitely go through a more thorough editing process and all that kind of thing. And, just because you play games or know about games doesn't necessarily make you a good writer. So the quality can vary with self-published works, and that's true of, professionally published stuff too. But regardless, there's a lot of retro gaming books coming out for sure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Just an example like what you're talking about, because I have like both versions. The difference in quality I noticed in all areas between like the third and fourth editions of Phoenix is just simply like amazing. It's like it's like when I hit the fourth edition last year, I'm like this is the same book. But because it's totally different.
By the way, Greg, I didn't say anything for the last couple of minutes. I think you're talking about Brett. You used my name.
You're talking about Leonard Herman's book, Phoenix. Yeah, it's on the fourth edition. Yeah, it's in the fourth edition now.
Right.
And,
yes. Okay.
And it's the first one was just a slim volume, and without much in the way of production values. And the current edition, it's got color photos, and there's a color version and a black and white version. And it's his book. He's Leonard Herman's a good friend of mine, and so I'm perfectly cool with pushing Phoenix. Great book.
Yeah, definitely. And sorry for any like name confusion.
No, you're cool.
Going out there, but
Joe Santulli, the guy that runs the one of the curators of the National Video Game Museum, calls me Texas Lynn, referring to Leonard Herman. So it's all good.
Yeah, Joe's a great guy. Like I knew him all the way back from Digital Press days. So,
As a matter of fact, Digital Press, that's when in the early '90s when the Digital Press fanzine, when I discovered it, I was like, wow, other people like Atari and ColecoVision television too. Because in the '90s, it was hard to find anybody that liked all that old stuff.
Sure.
And so when I discovered that, in Russ Perry's Slapdash fanzine, and there was some good ones back then.
Well, the internet has been very has definitely brought together a lot of people who didn't realize so many of the people were interested in the same thing as they. Sometimes they're good.
Absolutely,
sometimes, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. But
I'd say.
Yes, definitely. Like it's definitely like a double-edged sword. But video games are cool for the most part. But we're here to talk about a video game that Brett wanted to discuss. Neither George or I had experience this game in the past, so I'm curious to hear from you, Brett. What's your history of this game? What do you want to talk about in this podcast?
Well, I like games that are pretty much pick up and play. Where they're not super complex. I'm not a huge RPG guy or turn-based strategy. Those aren't really my favorite kind of games. I like, at the end of a long day, I'm tired. I just like to blow some steam with a video game. And Zoop is one of those great games that you can just pick up and play and pretty much very quickly figure out what's going on. It's a puzzle game, but it also has elements of a shooter. And it's really interesting. It kind of reminds me a little bit of... you remember Cosmic Arc for the Atari 2600?
Yes, I do.
Sort of in the center, shooting outward.
Right.
Or at least, And as a matter of fact, we're talking about Digital Press. The advanced edition of the Digital Press Collector's Guide calls Zoop Cosmic Arc meets Tetris. And that's a pretty good description of the game. Because you're kind of shooting outward at these shapes that come in, and you try to shoot one to the same color and all that kind of thing. And so there's puzzle elements, shooter elements, and it's just a fun game to pick up and play. And it progresses, it gets harder as you go along, and the music picks up. It's kind of got a jazzy soundtrack, and the tempo sort of picks up as you play, and the game gets harder and flashier and more difficult as you go along. It's just one of those great addicting puzzle games, and it's a notch beneath the best puzzle games like Tetris, like maybe Dr. Mario and stuff like that. But it's pretty darn good.
Yeah, that's a pretty good summary, like right there. Let's talk about the background a little bit, so then we get into the gameplay itself. Zoop was developed and released for multiple systems besides Super NES. Like 1995. It was developed by a small company called Hookstone Productions. I could not find anything out there on this company. That's how obscure they are. They did not do very much in their short history. They developed this game, but they developed one other puzzle game called Set No Returns for both the PC and the PlayStation. And they tried to develop a third game, but the third game of that game never got released.
What was that game called?
Set No Returns was the other game that they developed. It's it's also a puzzle game, but very different than Zoop as far as gameplay goes. So, Zoop was published by Viacom, New Media, the big entertainment company, which, like many other entertainment companies of the day, was also established a video game branch to publish games. We've already covered Viacom in past episodes. I wouldn't spend too much time here talking about it. But Viacom really pushed this game hard because they wanted it to be successful. This was the whole, the early 90s. There was a whole puzzle craze going on because of Tetris, and other games like that. So they wanted the game published on multiple systems. That same year in 1995, besides the Super NES, it also came out for Genesis. There was a DOS version, the Macintosh, PlayStation, and also the Game Boy, and the Game Gear.
And the Jaguar.
Yeah. Yep. The following year, the Jaguar also got a version of the game, and in Japan only, the Saturn.
Oh, okay. Japan only for the Saturn.
Yeah, which makes sense. The Saturn, Saturn was very popular in Japan, more popular than it was over here in the West. So,
well, I have the PlayStation 1 version of Zoop in the long box, which is kind of cool. I like to collect the long box games.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And, yeah. And one thing I did notice between the two comparable ones, the Super Nintendo, well, the PlayStation one's pretty similar to the Genesis, and there's not, they seem to the Genesis and Super Nintendo ones, but directly between the Genesis and Super Nintendo games, at least for me, the Super Nintendo one controls better. When you're playing the Genesis one, the D-pad doesn't seem to be as accurate. Sometimes you'll push a button, you'll try to make your shooter go in one direction and it'll go in the other, and it just the controls don't seem as sure or as accurate on the Genesis one. So the Super Nintendo one's tighter, and it may just be the controller itself handles that kind of game better, because I think the Super Nintendo controller is superior.
Well,
but,
I feel
that's me.
Yeah, I feel that way too. But
yeah, or maybe just for this game, whatever reason, I feel like the Super Nintendo one controls a little better.
Yeah, that's a good observation. I've not played any of the versions of the games. I can't really comment on that.
Same.
Most of the versions of the game, as you noted, Brett, are pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Really, the only major differences between the versions are the Jaguar version has a different soundtrack. The soundtrack of that version of the game is more jazz styled.
It's got a pretty jazzy sound on the Genesis and Super Nintendo one too. It may be a different soundtrack, but it's the same genre.
Yeah. And also, the Game Boy version also features a multiplayer mode. The only version that does.
Ooh. Really?
Yes.
That's cool. Cause see, one record when I was playing working on my Super Nintendo book and Genesis book and everything, I was thinking, man, this really needs a 2-player simultaneous mode, because that would be really fun. But the Game Boy has one, you say?
Yes, it does.
Very cool.
But
that's weird, because I can definitely see there being room for multiplayer, whether competitive, cooperative, or maybe even both. Not sure what the story is on that, but I think that'd be really cool. Like, you just maybe have two people on the same, in the same area, just maybe trying to help each other, or even trying to mess each other up or something. I don't know. Or maybe like Battle Zoop.
Yeah.
Uh,
Should have created a sequel, Battle Zoop.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. If it would have sold a little better, maybe they would have come up with Battle Zoop. That'd be the perfect sequel.
Right?
Well, since you brought it up, let me take a quick look at this online to see how multiplayer works in the Game Boy version.
Probably link cables.
I'm curious to see about whether whether it's cooperative, cooperative or not. But
One tiny bit of trivia: the Jaguar version does have a battery high scores to save to the cartridge.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah,
I'm sure the Game Boy
is.
version. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
No, go ahead.
Oh,
that was the only
I
point
was just gonna say, the Game Boy version with the multiplayer is probably just like probably competitive, but
yeah, you might have two implements or ships or whatever you call them out there shooting at once and trying to compete to get the most score, the highest score or something, just to get the most. That'd be fun.
I don't know how much the data transfer is on that cable, but I know a decent amount of games were like, slower games. So, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, unfortunately, there's something out here showing multiplayer mode. I will say, however, that the game, considering it's on the Game Boy, the gameplay is very solid. They did a great job with the shapes on a black and white system to differentiate them.
The Game Boy was a pretty good system for puzzles.
Yes, it was. Yep.
Yeah,
not supposed to get
very
good.
Yeah.
But
right.
That's where the Picross series started. Was on the Game Boy.
Right.
So also as part of the promotion, the heavy promotion that Viacom gave the game upon release, Blockbuster had a promotion themselves for the game as part of a rent one get one free deal, where you rented the game and paid for it, you were allowed to rent the second game free, like in the store.
Huh. That's cool.
Nice.
So a very major push. The game.
Well, just real quick, speaking of publicity for the game, the video game critic at videogamecritic.com, him commenting on Zoop for the Jaguar, he says, "I fondly recall the hilarious magazine ads for this game in the mid-90s that scientifically explained how Zoop would systematically drive a person mad." So that was one thing about puzzle games. The advertising for them, they would talk about, different ones, how they'd make you insane or crazy or addicted or whatever, it was like a positive to have a mental condition over these games, some of these games.
Yeah. Well, the game's official slogan was America's largest cure of time. So,
right. When someone says a game is addicting, like it's a negative, I'm like, no, it's not. That means it's good.
Right. Well, unless you let it control your life, right?
Right.
This is true.
Exactly. Yeah. Also, finally, as a side note, this was the only game that Viacom published in their history of publishing games during this time period that was actually original. Everything else Viacom published was everything else Viacom published was tied to one of their properties, in some way, shape, or form. So, I guess they just really liked this game and wanted to, and that was going to be a success. So
it's a cool game. It's one of those games that's both intense and relaxing at the same time. I mean, the colorful graphics are sort of easy to look. They're just calming colors, and the jazzy soundtrack. It's just a game you can not really hard to figure out. You can just kick back and relax and play it. But at the same time, once you get a few levels in, or if you select a higher difficulty level or a higher higher skill level or a higher level in general at the beginning and the option screen, it's hard right away. But either way, it's a fun, relaxing game to play.
It's like Tetris, you can start, it's all relaxing and slow, and then you get to the point where it just starts ramping up and everything's going crazy, and you're like, oh no, and then it's over.
Right.
Actually, I was going to ask you, Brent, since you had the most experience with the game, why don't you describe the gameplay, for those out there, played it?
Okay, so the object of the game is basically to eliminate a random sequence of colored objects that advance toward you from the four sides of the square-shaped grid, because it's like a square, it's like a grid, and you're in the center part with this triangle, and all these different shapes advance on you while you're playing. So you can shoot upward, downward, left, and right. If you shoot a shape that is the same color as you, it disappears from the screen. And you can shoot entire rows of the same color can be destroyed at once if you shoot them. If you shoot a shape of a different color, your firing implement will switch colors with that shape, and the shape will remain on the grid. So say if you're wanting to shoot a row of green shapes that are coming in, but your firing implement is blue, you should point somewhere else to shoot a green, and then you go back to that row that's coming on you, and you shoot at that row because it's close to you. You don't want the shapes getting all the way into the little box where you are in the center of the screen. So if there's a long row of something, you should shoot it fast, because you can't let it get in the middle, or the game will end. Unlike Tetris, where items fall to the bottom, these advance from the edges of the screen inward to the center where you are, and you want to shoot them to keep them out of the middle, but you have to shoot ones of the same color. And so if you shoot one of these shapes that's a different color, it'll turn your ship to that color, and then you can shoot light colors. So if that makes sense.
It's kind of like Dr. Mario, but you're shooting the colors out, and you're obviously not trying to kill viruses, but
Right. Yeah.
Or kind of like Bejeweled, but you're shooting things out, or columns, kind of like that.
Yeah, it's similar to a lot of games, but the gameplay, the actual gameplay mechanic in this game is very unique. I can't think of a game.
Yeah, it's different
like
because you're in the center shooting outward, and they're advancing on you, and you just want to shoot the ones of the same color as your ship, and that'll eliminate them from the screen. And to change the color of your ship, you shoot a particular color, and it works really well, really smooth, really cool. And when you have cleared enough shapes from the playfield, you advance to the next level, and the action gets faster, and the screen gets a little more crowded.
Right.
There's 99 levels.
Yes, there are.
And I rarely reach the 99th level. These games that brag they have 100 levels or whatever, how many people actually get to the end? Maybe a small percentage.
Right.
Yeah, and also a nice touch, as you go through the game, as the game speeds up, and as the game speeds up, it's like you go through the levels, the background also changes. So it's like various backgrounds that the game uses. A lot of them remind me about like Windows screensaver,
right. Yes.
like art. So,
yes.
Yeah, for a system as powerful as the Super Nintendo that runs Donkey Kong Country, the graphics are definitely pretty darn simplistic.
Well, yeah.
But they work.
And
for the
there's
game.
nothing wrong with being simplistic.
Right.
Yeah, you don't need elaborate graphics for a game like this. If you had them too elaborate, they'd probably get in the way of the gameplay or confuse the screen.
Sure.
So they're fine the way they are.
Right.
Yeah, so the gameplay is a little bit hard to describe verbally, but once you actually start playing the game, you pick it up pretty quick. I mean, it takes at least for me, it took a bit to figure out what was going on, but once I got the hang of it, after point, it play just clicks.
Yeah.
You figure out what you have to do. So.
Are you one of these people that jumps right in without reading the manual?
I did not read the manual for this one, mostly because of the fact that I was doing research for the podcast first.
Right.
I already found the gameplay, so I'm like, okay, I can handle this. But
I read a manual as a last resort. I like to try the game first and kind of see if I know what I'm doing, and then I'll go to the manual if I have to.
I do the same, even with the RPGs, which is probably a bad idea, but hey, I still figure it out.
Hey, who remembers being a kid and sitting in the back seat, anxiously opening your game on the way home and reading the manual on the way home from the store, and by the time you get home, you know how to play?
I do.
Yes.
Right? I mean,
Very
I
cool.
come from an era where these games give you tutorials and whatnot, but still, it's so weird to think back on that and say, yeah, I used to do that as well, because nowadays games have a little piece of paper or whatever that says, hey, go to this website for the manual.
Right. I miss the days of the nice thick instruction manual. They're just kind of neat to thumb through, especially if some of them had comic strips, some of them were in color, some of them had kind of puns throughout, or information, like the Activision games had information about the designers and things like that.
Yeah,
Right,
I remember when manuals started getting more sparse, and it was really sad.
Right, yeah. Agreed.
But anyway, so we already mentioned the graphics of the game quite a bit. They're not super fancy, but they're nice. Yeah, they get the job done.
Yeah, they're pleasant to look at. They're fine.
Like good choice of colors. Like no confusing the pieces.
Like if you're playing, sometimes when you're playing Trivial Pursuit, just the board game, not the video game, but just the board game, and is that orange or pink? What is that? There's nothing like that in this game. They're very distinctive and clear.
Right. So
Trivial Pursuit, the best way to test your color blindness.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So like very simple graphics. I mean, like they were done simple on purpose because, like I said, this game was released on multiple systems. So they wanted to try to keep it like as universal as possible. Good choice of colors. Like it's good. Looks very pleasing on the Super NES for sure. We already mentioned the music a little bit. The soundtrack of this game is very good. Has a very like some pieces are very jazz sounding. Other pieces like a very like soft rock.
The only thing I don't remember I don't remember the music doing this, but like when everything starts piling up and you're in that panic moment, the music doesn't like change or anything, right?
No, it does. It gets more tense.
Right. Okay.
It kind of speeds up a little. It seems, at least I don't think that was totally in my head.
No.
I think it kind of intensifies a little, but it still has that jazzy. You hear something that sounds like a xylophone here and there.
I don't remember the game really making you feel that sense of panic like other puzzle games will do when it's like, oh no, you're almost there, you're almost at your limit, you're about to lose the game. It's like, I'm panicking. This game
like when you're drowning in Sonic and you hear that horrible sound.
Right. This game is a little more like more relaxing genteel with that, so you're not really panicking, at least not as much when you're about to lose.
Yeah. Right. It kind of goes down a little easier. Losses go down a little easier because it kind of has a genteel quality to it.
Right.
Plus, also to be fair, not that you have a chance to notice this when the game gets frantic, but the game does, but the game does do one nice thing I appreciate. It gives you a warning, warnings what lines can have a block, a shape appear next. Yes. I had like a box flash there. So if you notice that, you have time to try to take care of it before it crowds onto your.
And it also has continues.
Yes, it does. Thank God for that.
Yes, gotta have them in this game.
Yep, and it's also a score system which you can use just for bragging rights, just to see like how well you do.
Right.
So, because obviously, like Tetris, the more shapes you kill at once, the more points you get. So, one thing this game has.
You kill them? Did you just say you kill them? Who says there's violence in this game, Greg? You're just matching colors. Why does it have to have violence?
Can you truly kill a shape?
Can you kill a color?
Yeah.
Yes.
Greg's playing those violent video games.
But one thing this game does have that Tetris do not have is power-ups. Those power-ups can really like save your butt sometimes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
There are 4 power-ups in this game. Just talk about them. Just cover them real quick. A star will clear one row or one column, like on one side, which could be great for like getting rid of. Which could be great for like getting rid of a row that's just about to kill you. The paint blob will clear all the shapes that are the same color as the first shape you hit on that side only. So basically, like if, for example, like you activate the weapon and you hit a blue shape, any of the blue shapes on that side of the screen, go bye also. So that's so that's a pretty handy power up. The lightning bolt will clear any shape directly next to the first shape it hits in the next 2 layers after that. So it's kind of like almost like a bomb, almost where you're supposed to like a lightning bolt. So
right. That definitely adds some little dynamic action to the proceedings.
Right. And the most rarest and most powerful and useful of the power-ups, the spring. you have to collect this one numerous times for it to work. But if you collect 5 springs,
if you collect 5, the entire playfield will be cleared out.
Yes, which is awesome.
No doubt.
So that can really like save your butt sometimes. So
Right.
yeah, the power-ups are nice. I mean, like, you know, they help you without really being overpowered, I think.
Right,
So,
yeah.
So I mean, they're very like beneficial.
It's a well balanced game.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think the game gets too frantic too fast. I'm never able to get past the past the 30s.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very challenging, very unique puzzle game, like for sure. You already mentioned the controls earlier, Brett. The controls of the game handle like pretty well.
Yeah, they do.
So
Definitely better than the Genesis version, from what I've experienced.
Just curious what you say that, having not played the Genesis version myself.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel as tight, or as just kind of, it's not as accurate. You know, you pretty much always point the direction you want to in the Super Nintendo version. In the Genesis version, sometimes when you push to the left, it'll go up, or at least you thought you pushed to the left. It just doesn't seem as accurate and as precise.
Interesting. But
just feels a little looser. Yeah.
Yeah. One other like interesting thing I learned about this game, researching it, is also part of the promotion that Viacom Blockbuster was giving this game very heavily. This game was also featured in the second World Video Game Championship that Blockbuster did back in 1995. Like along Donkey Kong Country, Kirby's Avalanche, and NBA Live 95. And the fact this game was included in that, when it wasn't even like released yet, they already announced this game is going to be on the competition before the game even got released, which is very like really moment. So yeah, they really tried to push this game hard.
Yeah, I didn't know that off the top of my head anyway, that it was part of the Blockbuster Championship, Zoop.
Yeah, I did not even know about them because I didn't have any Blockbusters like near me growing up. So,
right,
I heard about them like in hindsight. So, I guess the only flaws, the only problems I really had with this game was the fact that, like I said, I think it's challenging very fast. I can't play this game for as long as Tetris, for example. Mm-hmm. But I suck at puzzle games overall. But anyway, also the fact that the only drawback I'd probably say, and this may just be because of the emulation. Every now and then, when they actually got frantic, there was a little bit of slowdown I noticed.
Yeah, I didn't really pick that up.
Yeah, I didn't notice that either.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe
could be the emulation.
Yeah, could be, but
yeah.
So George, I know that you probably are not so I believe at least that that like me, you're not a huge puzzle fan.
I like puzzle games, I like a good Picross, I like Tetris,
Sure, yeah.
So on and so forth. But this game really was not my game.
Ooh, why's that?
I for some reason, it just didn't really catch me. I most certainly can see why people like this game, for sure, but for some reason, this game just wasn't for me. I didn't
So you saw it as playable, but not your cup of tea.
Right. Exactly. The whole thing of, like, moving this, like, arrow or ship around, and I don't know, it was just weird. I can't exactly explain. It just certainly wasn't my type of game. Maybe it just, how everything just stacked up, and I was just like, I'm not good at this game. I don't know.
Right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
That's actually a very good tie-in, like nice section, because when this game got released, the reviews were all over the place too. I mean, some people loved it, some people hated it. So,
it's a quirky title. I can see why people wouldn't like it, and I can see why people do.
Yeah,
it's a quirky title.
Right. So, I mean, like these review scores, I mean, you have anywhere from like Next Generation giving it like 2 out of 5 stars, all the way up to like All Game giving it like 4 out of 5 stars. So Nintendo Power was 12.7 out of 20. GamePro gave it like 14.5, to like a 20. The current aggregate score of the game on Game Rankings is 63.5%. So
the video game critic at videogamecritic.com gives it a B, and out of 29 reader votes, they gave it a C+.
Okay.
So yeah, it's all over the map.
Yeah.
Right. So so it's like the most things. So like EGM didn't cover the Super NES version specifically. They covered the Game Gear version, but it's like they're 4 reviewers because EGM back then, 4 people that cover their games. They were all they were all over the place too. Like two of them, one of them loved it, one of them hated it. It's like the 2 people that were in the middle. So,
Right.
So
that pretty much typifies this game.
Right. So basically the comments like both like pro and con mean it means basically that some people thought the game's too busy, too much work involved in it compared to like games like Tetris. It didn't the biggest complaint, and I think George touched upon this, they didn't find the game addictive. I mean, Tetris definitely has a very addictive quality to it, along some puzzle games out there. And most people who knocked the game just said the game didn't have that must keep playing factor to it.
Yeah, I didn't have that myself.
Right.
I didn't have that feeling.
Yeah, so they praise the music, they praise the graphics.
Yeah.
They said the game is like very unique. But somebody made the very the very subtle observation that the eye-tracking backgrounds in later levels can make the game a slightly more difficult because it's because that combined with all the frantic action of the gameplay makes the game a lot more difficult and
reminds me of Qbert 3 a little bit, where the backgrounds get kind of crazy.
Oh yeah, right. Long time to cover that game on this podcast. So that was one of the first games we covered. So anyway, so finally, I think that probably GamePro, when they covered the Jaguar version, summed up the game probably the best. They wanted to summarize all the reviews, all the reviews and all the opinions about the game. They basically said, the summary: a classic, no; addictive, yes. So that's but
for certain people.
Yes, exactly. So. That's I kind of feel in the middle of like you guys, because I like puzzle games. I don't love them. I'm not great at them, but I do like puzzle games. I certainly have played the heck out of like Tetris, Dr. Mario, and whatnot over the years. And this game just not as good as, and as you guys said, this game just not as good as them.
Right.
However, it's perfectly good. However, what it is, I think it's a perfectly good puzzle game. I mean, it's it's well programmed. It's well put together. The graphics and music are very good. The gameplay is unique, certainly. It's just like it's really one of those games. It's really one of those games where I'm like, if you like puzzle games, this is really a game you have to try to see if you like it or not. It's kind of like it's kind of like an acquired taste.
There's a game called Killer Bees for the Odyssey 2.
Yes, I played it.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. It's not like Zoop, but it does have something in common with it. You can't really fully appreciate what it is until you actually play it.
Right.
Because it's so odd and unusual. You just have to play it to know whether you like it or not.
Right. So, but yeah, so definitely. So yeah, I mean, Zoop back then was given a big push. Nowadays, I don't think the game gets talked about that much. Viacom stores the rights to the game, but obviously they're not going to do anything with it.
Let me rephrase that a little bit. Obviously, you have to play any game to know whether you like it or not. But what I mean is, you have to play it before you even really can grasp what type of game it is. I'll put it. That's what I meant to say. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like anybody who enjoys puzzle games probably should give this a shot, just see what they think.
Yeah,
or not.
Yeah, I recommend it, and I give it pretty high marks in my Super SNES Omnibus. I don't do a grading system because I want just people to read it and just sort of come away from it just from what they've read. I didn't do stars or numbers or grades or anything like that. But
yeah, I like that better because
high review.
It seems like people like to, oh, he gave this 4 stars, but this one's 3. But he says he recommends both, but I don't know. Maybe I'll just check out the 4-star one. And I kind of prefer a system that it's like, do you recommend this? Yes, no, maybe, depends, so on
Yeah,
and so
and
forth.
through the
Then something
describing
like,
of the game,
3 stars, you know?
right? I
Yeah.
wanted people to judge it, but based on my describing the game rather
Right.
than some arbitrary value.
Number, yeah.
And I don't knock that system if it works for some people, but for me, I just didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So, very interesting game. Certainly, like very unique. So I appreciate you bringing this to the table. Brett, because
Absolutely,
otherwise-
it was a pretty cool game to talk about.
Yeah, because otherwise I don't think I would have played it. But
Right.
I
George,
might have like played it at some point, and it's
okay. Yep.
sitting in a ROM collection on my Pi, and it's like, I don't know what's this. It's got a Z in the title, and it's all the way at the bottom. But what is this? Let's play roulette.
Yeah, well, according to Wikipedia, and I'm not really sure, like take that with a grain of salt, obviously, but Zoop is a British slang term meaning to clear something. So I guess where the name of the game so I guess where the name of the game came from. So, but George, did you have anything else you want to say about this game? I mean, you already said what you thought about it, but anything else?
No, not really.
Okay.
I think we've covered it pretty well.
Yeah.
And actually, maybe reflective of the fact that this game probably received a big print run because of how much it was pushed. Maybe because of the fact that people you're kind of forgotten it. They're kind of forgotten about these days. This is probably the cheapest game I've seen in the history of the podcast on eBay to pick up a copy. I mean, the prices of this are ridiculously low.
How low?
Well, the game's first of all, the game's pretty easy to find. Super NES version alone, 81 copies currently listed on there. 26 copies I recently sold. You can have a card only in this game. These prices include shipping, by the way, for as low as $4.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a good for a Super Nintendo. There's not many.
That's a great price.
Not many non-sport Super Nintendo games that are under $5.
Yeah,
right, exactly. So car prices range away from like $4 to $10. CIB wasn't that. CIB was not that much more expensive either. So CIB's copy sold anywhere from like $11.50 to $18.
Are there any sealed listings?
Yes, and get these prices. 2 copies sealed recently sold. One of them was not in very good shape, so it only sold for so only got like $11 for it. But one of them was a mint copy, a mint sealed copy, so for $27.50.
Wow.
Wow.
That's the cheapest sealed game we've seen on this podcast.
cheapest prices, period, of any game in the podcast.
Yeah.
Jeopardy for the Super Nintendo is another cheap sealed game. That might give it. That might be similar. But not many.
That's right. Yeah.
Did we? I know we covered
Jeopardy
that game,
was still
right?
hanging around at KB
We did
Toys
cover
late
this
in
game.
the life.
Yeah.
I don't remember the prices on that game though.
I don't either. I don't either. I don't either. I have to go back, look at the look at the episode. So, speaking about the release, Brett already mentioned this was pretty middle of the road for Super NES Genesis as far as lifespan goes. But Brett already mentioned that he had a long box copy of the game, which is only used for the PlayStation's first 6 months.
It's very early, yes.
Right. Whereas by comparison, this was one of the last games to come out like the Jaguar. So very interesting history of console development of where this game got released, looking at the various ebbs and flows of the consoles that were out.
It's like Doom. It was on almost everything.
Yes. Yes, well, exactly. So that's probably why the game's so cheap, because not because it's a bad game, just because they probably produce tons of copies of it. So, but anyway, that's good for us because like I said, Viacom's just sitting on the rights these days, and the game's never gotten released anywhere else over the years. So, very cheap game to pick up.
Zoop
it's
2
just one of those
coming
games
out
that
next
slips under
year.
the radar and isn't in huge demand, so it's cheap.
Yeah.
So
definitely the demand most certainly affects the price of the game.
Yeah.
So if nobody wants Zoop, then you can get Zoop for $4.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Well, a
nice
few more people will be looking for it now, maybe.
It's gonna go up by 2 cents. Oh no.
Yeah, after this podcast releases, it'll go up by 2 cents.
Well,
Oh
so we're giving a quick look. The Genesis and the PlayStation versions are pretty cheap also.
Yeah.
The Game Boy version commands a bit higher price, probably because of the multiplayer feature.
Maybe.
The Jaguar and the Saturn versions are the most expensive because
I'd love to
like
play a
small.
multiplayer version of this game.
Yeah, like I said, I'm very curious to see how it plays in Game Boy. I couldn't find anything online talking about it, so I imagine it's probably like, I imagine you probably take turns because you'd have to probably do some major rewrite of the code to handle two players
Well,
playing at once. So yeah.
I mean, if you took turns, if it's not really 2-player co-op, then I wouldn't think,
Yeah.
unless you're just working on the same. I mean, there's
Right.
certain games where I would imagine it's a link cable, but who knows?
Yeah.
I can't say.
Right. One last thing. There is actually a code. There is actually a code in this game. If you want to cheat for whatever reason, and this is pretty minor cheat code. You go to where it says level and type in ICPOINTS, which is IC points. You get 100,000 points.
wow, that's a terrible code.
Yeah, well, it's in the game, so I'm just reporting on it. But
It's not as good as I forget what game it is, but there's a game that you specifically type in "help me" and it gives you a bunch of stuff.
oh
Nice.
yeah, yep. So, but anyway, I think that's pretty much all we have to say about this game. Brett, so once again, we thank you very much for taking time out of your busy life to come on the podcast, and for bringing us and for bringing us a game that you really enjoy.
Oh, I'm happy to do so. And if you don't mind, I'd like to mention that I've started a YouTube show recently.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's called Tales from a Retro Gamer. And if you look for me on YouTube, just look my name, Brett Weiss, BRETTWEISS. If anybody wants to subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. I'm trying to build up my subscriber base and get the word out more. What I do is I talk about gaming back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, mostly, and it's from someone who was there at the time. I remember my first game I played in 1975. I remember playing Midway's Gunfight and Pong at the skating rink, bowling alley, those kind of places. And late in 1975, my cousin got Pong in his room, in his bedroom for Christmas, which just blew my mind. In 76, my two best friends each had a Fairchild Channel F. And 77, obviously, and on Atari and television, and on and on and on. And I've got a ton of stories to tell from gaming back then. And so every episode, I release a new episode each Tuesday at 2 o'clock Central Standard Time. And again, it's called Tales from a Retro Gamer, and you can just find it by looking up my name, Brett Weiss, BRETTWEISS. And I've got tons of great stories, including the time I asked Ozzy Osbourne if he wanted to play Pac-Man. True story.
Wow.
Yeah, that episode is up.
Yeah, there's actually
I
a lot
subscribed.
of
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
there are actually a lot of celebrities who enjoy games. One sort like or another.
Yeah, a lot of them take them with with actors. They'll have a game system in their trailer. Some of them have them on tour buses and stuff. But I can tell you, Ozzy Osbourne is not a gamer. I'll tell you that. Although one of his band members is, or one of his old. This was in 1986.
Yeah.
And we followed their tour bus to a restaurant, and one of their band members played some pole position. So you'll have to watch the episode to get all the gory details. It's pretty cool.
Awesome. Cool.
So weird. I know it's like 2019, but for some reason it's still very interesting to hear that X celebrity or Y comedian or whomever that has some kind of name, enjoys games and have a history with them. It's like, wow. But I mean, we're definitely starting to see more and more of that. But still at the same time, we're all surprised every time we hear about it.
We shouldn't be. They're just people like us. They just, lots of people like games. Apparently, Robin Williams is one of the biggest gamers. He named apparently he named his kid Zelda.
Yeah,
I believe.
Yeah, that's why. That's why he was in a few Nintendo commercials for one of the, I think it was one of the DS Legend of Zeldas or something like that.
I think so. That
over
sounds
here.
right.
So yeah.
And way back in the day, you would see profiles in like Vidiot magazine of some celebrity playing some game and what games they played and stuff. I still find it interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, absolutely. Are you working on any books right now, Brett, or are you just taking a break from writing like right now?
Well, after I finished the 2-volume Super Nintendo set, I took a few months off because I was just absolutely exhausted and drained.
Sure.
Volume 2 was my 10th book. So I've written a whole encyclopedia on the band Kiss. I've written the 3-volume classic home video game set.
Wow.
I wrote the 100 greatest console video games 1977 through 1987, and so I've written a bunch of books, and I've had over 1,600 articles published in different magazines, newspapers, and websites and stuff. So I just took a pretty big break from most writing, and right now I'm working on I've had some time off from that, and my batteries are recharged for that kind of thing. And I've got a big project in the works, but my publisher won't let me announce it yet, unfortunately. But
that's quite fine.
Yeah, so probably late this year or early next, I'll be able to discuss it and post about it and stuff. But it's going to be a biggie, and it's going to be really cool. But if you want to keep up with all my stuff, Twitter, you can find me at Brett Weiss, CHVG. Instagram, Brett Weiss Retro Gamer. And right now, most importantly, since it's a project I'm really trying to get going, just like I said, check me out on YouTube, just under Brett Weiss, BRETTWEISS. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Absolutely. So, so definitely check out his stuff. Like, I've read some of his books in the past, and they're all like excellent stuff. So I definitely check out the YouTube channel.
Well, thank you. It's been a lot of fun talking about Zoop with you guys.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So if you want to reach George and myself, for whatever reason,
why would you want to talk to those guys?
You can send us an email if you want to the SNES podcast yahoo.com. You can also find us on Facebook. We have a group on there. Or you can also leave a review on iTunes. That'd be appreciated. We also have a Patreon at www.patreon.com/SNES podcast, where for a little $1 a month you can get shouted out on the episode, as I'm doing right now, to Chad, Richard, and Savan. Thank you guys very much for backing us. For higher tiers, you can also get early access episodes, dictate episodes to us, and so on. Very shortly, we're going to be covering a game actually that a Patreon person asked for. But we are not there quite yet because it's George's turn to pick next. What are we covering next time on the Podcast?
Are you faking me out like last time, or is it actually my pick we're going on to?
It is actually your pick.
Okay. So I picked the game Bahamut Lagoon.
Yes, very good Square RPG that never came out here in the West, unfortunately. So, but
yeah, that's one I've not played. I don't do imports too much.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, if you look at the list of podcast episodes, a lot of the import games are from. Actually, we've had a huge influx of import games we covered just because of me on this podcast.
Well, that's good.
Plus, also Bahamut Lagoon because. Plus, also the fact that Bahamut Lagoon, because it was a Square game, was one of the very first games we translated. My fans way back when.
Whoa, yeah, years ago.
Oh God, long time.
Yeah.
I remember playing this back in college in 96. I mean, that's how long it's been. 97, I think. So it's been out there for a long time.
Those people do amazing work, though.
They do. Yes.
If you go on romhacking.net, there's always news about something. And I love it because there's articles that they'll put up, and it's like, this game was finally fully translated after 5 years of hard work, and and a lot of them are Super Famicom games.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So awesome. So thank you. So anyway, that's gonna wrap up this episode. Thank you again very much for listening to us, everybody. We very much appreciate it. Thank you again, Brett, for coming on the podcast with us again.
Hey, thanks, guys. It's been a lot of fun. I'll talk to y'all later.
All right. Thank you very much, and everybody have a good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it is out there.
You and the semantics.
Yes.
Have a good time. There you go. Let's generalize it. Have a good time.
Yep. And to and to quote George, Zoop Zoop.
Zoop zoop.
Zoop, zoop,
Okay.
doobity doop. I think that's what I said. I don't know.
Something like that. Whatever.
Zoop out.
Zoop out.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man. Now you're playing with power. Deep power.